Welcome to Chasing Frosty Radio, where we discuss the unidentified, the unexplainable, paranormal, conspiracies, and much more. Starring your host and co-host, Jenny Nicasio, Sean Kelly, Trish Moe, and Jason Sledgehammer Ryan Petro. Brought to you by UPRN Network. Now for your host, Jenny Nicasio.
Good evening and welcome to Chasing Prophecy on the UPRN Radio FM 105.3 network. Thank you. New Orleans, where we discuss anything. I tell you what, you think it was a full moon tonight. Remember to like us on Facebook and follow us on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. I am Jenny Nicasio, along with my co-host, Sean Kelly, Jason I. Petro, and Trisha Mo the Fabulous. Happy Torture Tuesday.
Happy Torture Tuesday.
It's one of those. It's going to be one of those. I can tell already.
Fabulous. What?
You think it was a full moon? Well, we're still on the full moon, aren't we? Sort of. It's almost gone. But anyways, I think it's going to be a good night tonight. Oh, wow. Talk about heavy sigh.
Yeah. Well, you know why my hair's standing up? It's because I was working on an electrical outlet, and you can do it without turning the power off, and this is what happens.
What's that character? Heatmeister? Is that what it looks like?
Kind of looks like Marv from Home Alone.
Yeah,
get electrocuted in the basement.
That's
my favorite scene.
Absolutely. Well, did you guys all have a good St. Patrick's Day?
Yes, I did.
And Sean, did you find any leprechauns?
Yeah, it's downstairs in my room. I chained the bastard up.
Kick your brother out of there, Jesus.
Nah, I chained the little bastard up, and I got my pot of gold.
Christ!
I did.
Was it a little bastard, or was it a little bastard, or was it a big bastard?
No, it was a little 3-foot bastard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I bet our guests.
Yeah,
excuse me. I bet
we've already talked about Jesus and bastards all in the same. Like
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. This is why it's called Torture Tuesday, right, Jason?
Absolutely.
But I think our guests have seen a lot of leprechauns. Maybe, I don't know. But he has written a number of books about legendaries, beings such as Bigfoot, dragons, thunderbirds, and sea monsters, giants, and more. And he's also wrote a book titled The Mythical People of Ireland, which covered the Dula, I think that's how you say Dala, Nana, Mana, I don't know, druids and leprechaun and elves. Marty Ettington is back on the show. Good evening, Marty.
Hi guys,
welcome.
Good to see you all again. Nice to see you.
Great. And ladies and gentlemen, he's a good one for little people. So it's a good show after St. Patrick's Day with all the leprechauns. And even more interesting, Marty, you talk about the very small people. I'll call them small people because I don't know if they'd be offended if I called them little people. I don't know if they would, but you believe that legends of the little people exist all over the world. And we'll cover some of those reports that you mentioned in your books. And I want to ask you a question right off the bat before we get really into it. Now, the little people, I wrote some notes down. Where did the legends start from? And are they little people, not dwarfs, like the typical dwarfs that we see nowadays? Is their body parts proportionate or are they unproportionate? Go ahead, Marty. You got the floor.
Well, it depends on the legend, but there are legends all around the world of people who were about 3 feet tall. Now, there are some other stories of fairies that were a lot shorter, but you should really go back to the Forerunner race. The Forerunner race before any of the little people or the druids or fairies were the Tuatha De Danann. Have you guys heard of the Tuatha De Danann?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Tuatha De Danann were the legendary race in Ireland that came from the other world.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the legends said that their palaces and houses were below different hills. But a lot of the stories about the other world indicate that it's some type of parallel dimension. And so anyway, the Tuatha De Danann were the forerunners of little people. As far as we know, the oldest legends go back to Ireland and the British Isles. And so that's where I think the legend originated from. But if you look at the size of them, there was recent archaeological discovery in the last 10 years called the Flores people in Indonesia. Maybe you've heard of the Flores people.
Yeah, now wasn't there some kind of controversy? Didn't they they found a skull, but weren't they talking about that the bones were not right, comparable to?
Well, I think they found several skeletons, so they know the Flores people existed, who happened to be about 3 feet tall. But the question is, do they exist now or just in past history? Because there are legends of people seeing them in the present era, but most of the archaeological evidence says that they lived about at least 50,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of question about that. But I think it's really interesting that all of the legends of the little people have them mostly being 3 feet tall. And we're talking American Indians, we're talking Hawaiian legends, and we're talking about legends in Europe and the British Isles, even in the Middle East. So I thought it was really interesting. Of all of the legendary beings or animals, this is the only one that seems to show some type of archaeological evidence. I thought that's pretty cool.
So they have evidence, they have bones then?
Yes, skeletons of the Flores people. Archaeologists found those in one of the islands of Indonesia. You can look it up. And they were 3 feet tall.
Now, was their body parts proportionate, or would they have smaller arms?
I think they were fairly proportionate. I mean, I can't find, I don't have a picture of the skeleton to look, but I think they were.
I was, because that intrigued me when I found out we were going to talk about the Florians. The bones, I saw a picture of it. I caught it on the internet. And the arms are like really, really long, and the skull is kind of small.
Okay.
And they were saying, the archaeologists down there, that there's a big thing going on where they think that they're like different bones, making up this Florian. And the skull that you see is a woman. It's a woman's skull, and they call her Flo.
Well, I hadn't heard that controversy. I suppose that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And but again, there are also stories of people in those islands who claim to have seen those little people in the current day.
Oh, they actually seen them?
Yeah, and then if you go around the world, there's different legends, like the Menehune in Hawaii. In fact, there's a fish pond there called the Menehune Fish Pond, and there's books about those little people. And the Indians, American Indians, like the Mohegans, I think it is. I've got several different Indian tribes in one of my books who all talked about being familiar with little people, tribes, and civilizations. And then, of course, you get to Ireland and the numerous legends there about little people. And so, like many things, I look at patterns. And if there's a pattern saying that there were people all over the world and different stories say the same thing, I tend to give it some credibility.
That does sound interesting. What you just said, but now these little people, like you were talking from another dimension or parallel dimension, right?
Right.
Those Flo, could she have come from one of those?
I don't know, but I'll tell you why I talk about another dimension, because it's called the other world, and there's lots of historical documents about the other world. And the idea of the other world is that this is where the Tuatha De Danann and where many of these little people came from. And the reason I think it's another dimension is because time seems to flow at a different rate. And if you believe in the multiverse, which a lot of physicists do these days, you would expect that some of the physical properties of it would be slightly different than here. Mm-hmm. So it's very possible time could flow at a different rate. There are stories in Ireland of people who went to the other world, humans who went to the other world, and they thought they only stayed a short time, like days or weeks, and they came back and centuries had passed. And sometimes they had properties on that they'd acquired there that caused them to die when they came back. So that's why I think that there might be another dimension involved here. And just as an aside, the stories I've done about dragons and thunderbirds and Bigfoot, they all seem to indicate that they're real, but where did they come from? We don't have any locations for them. So one of my theories is maybe they also came from another dimension. Maybe it was the same dimension, maybe it was a different dimension. And I know that's getting pretty far out, but I don't know how you account for a lot of these sightings of all of these things, and then we can't find where they actually resided.
How many other people call it the other world? Sorry, Trish.
Oh, the other world? That's a common name in many historical documents about the Tuatha De Danann, about the fairies, that they came from the other world. Now, some people also say that they live in hills, and that there's different hills where they go into the hill and they live in palaces, or they live underneath the hill. But that may also be the connection to the other world. In fact, like one of the fairy stories from the 1860s were some people who saw a bunch of short little people or fairies dancing on a hill. And as they got to the top, they danced around the top of the hill and then disappeared. So did they go inside the hill, or did they go to the other world?
There's some kind of you know how in the little mystical show movies like Peter Pan and Tinkerbell, and they could go through trees and they could just. Well, she's one of the famous fairies, Tinkerbell.
Yes. And so it's a really interesting subject.
I was going to say, so in the, I guess, pagan and witches community, obviously, the Tuatha De Danann,
it's hard to say.
Has, there's beliefs that the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse originated with them in our beliefs. And of course in Ireland and Scotland, there's also Midgard, which is an actual place. And so you'll hear people talking about interdimensional days and portal days. Today is one of them, actually. It's 22 is a master number.
Right.
So from the 20th through the 22nd, typically and if you look in news reports, if you look, aside from people being crazy, usually because of the full moon falls on that time, a lot of these spiritual beings or interdimensional beings travel on these portal days. So and it's usually the new moon or the full moon. And so these portal days, now how they do it is using other elements. So a lot of times it can be through trees or water or hills. But it also revolves around ley lines.
Yes, I know, Jen, you wanted me to hold off on druids, but could I mention those because of
No, go right ahead.
So one of my books was on the druids. I got interested in them because they also were supposedly descended from the Tuatha De Danann. And we don't know a lot about the druids except from like old Roman stories and things like that in prehistory.
The druids, it's part of their beliefs. That's part of my ancestors. They didn't believe in writing things down.
Right.
They believed in passing information and knowledge down through storytelling and voices.
Yes.
So
the thing I wanted to say though, Trish, is that the druids have a lot of similarity to what I think are modern witchcraft practices. Maybe they were the forerunner of witches.
Oh, I'm sure
Absolutely.
they were.
Yeah.
They have the same holiday celebrate today. They also had a lot of herbal medicine that they did. They also had a lot to do with prophecy. And I have some ancestors.
You know what else was cool with the druids back at that time? They were considered elite people too.
Yes, they were the high-level priests
and
teachers
and stuff like that. Yeah, but
I would like to think that I have some ancestry to them because I've had a lot of prophecy in my life, and my ancestors came from Ireland and Scotland. So, and there were some other powers that the druids had too, but
telepathic.
What?
I was told they were telepathic.
Yes.
And my thing is, why did they worship trees? I mean, did they believe that the person actually died and went into a tree, like spirit?
They talk a lot about the spirit of the trees and how different trees have different spirits. Mm-hmm. Maybe Trish, you could elaborate on some of that.
Well, trees are they are the most connected to the source, to the earth, as far as anything on the surface, because they have the longest roots. Mm-hmm. So anything that it's kind of like grounding and things like that. Mm-hmm. Anything that has that lives a long time and has very strong roots will be more closely connected to the source. So a lot of you see it in especially so many sci-fi movies and stuff now, the trees, and even in witchcraft, and as far as trees being able to carry curses and things like that. And that's why, because it's one of the few things it regrows its limbs. It can continually seed other trees throughout its life. So it keeps a visual, it keeps a storyline. If you cut a tree and you see the tree rings, that tells a lot about everything in its timeline. So it's like a book, or kind of like our Akashic record, but it's a living record of its entire environment. Scientists have found that you can tell anything that went on in the environment, anything that, catastrophes, things like that happen based on tree rings.
Yes, and when I was reading about Druids, they had a lot of different types of trees, not only for medicine, but trees in their rituals. They were very tightly connected to the trees. And
mainly some of the oak.
Yes, that's a big one. And a lot of the visualizations have to do with visualizing your roots connecting to the earth, because the Druids have different meditational visualizations. It all seems to be connected. I wanted to mention one other aspect that seems to apply both to the little people and possibly to the Druids and other small beings, is if the Flores people existed, and I see, Sean, there is some question about that, but if they existed and they lived 50,000 years ago, maybe they were a much more advanced race than we are today. And maybe they developed psychic and paranormal abilities that allowed them to do a couple of things, like become invisible to humans, or to shift between dimensions, because that's supposedly one of the spiritual abilities a person can acquire, is to shift between dimensions. Again, going back to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and it all seems connected, because maybe that's how they avoid people, and maybe that's where they really live, and maybe they come from there. So I think it's really fascinating.
So is it possible that the Floridian people could have been aliens?
The Forteans?
Yeah. The little people.
I've heard of the Forteans. I don't know that much about them.
No. You're talking about the little people in Indonesia, right?
Oh, the Florians. Yeah, I'm sorry, I misheard.
I'm sorry. I'm from Pittsburgh. I speak different. Okay. But
get down there.
Have their own language.
But no. So if they are, let's just say they are from another dimension. Okay. Could it not be that they are an alien race?
That's possible. I mean, if beings originated from another dimension, then by definition they'd be an alien race. Not alien through space and time, but alien through alternative dimensions. Again, the multiverse is a very popular concept among physicists today, and there's different theories about how they might exist. And for people who aren't familiar with the multiverse, it's basically the idea that there are many different dimensions, I guess is the biggest word, that have different physical properties, different fundamental constants that we do. Like time might run differently, or some atomic constants might be different. And some people think there are infinite number of universes. And some people also think that those universes might, some of them, be connected and have portals to us. Now, one of my other books, remember we talked about time travel? And I also did a book on dimensional travel. There seem to be portals both for time warps and for dimensional warps. So again, I'm going by the consistency of evidence of stories of people who've reported dimensional transference there and back, or ending up in our dimension, which was different from where they thought they came from. So
I've done that before, but like not on purpose.
What's your story?
Yeah, really.
Oh man. So it was 2018, 2019. And my kids and it was like the town and everything in my surroundings was the same, aside from I had always seen spirits and aliens and stuff on a normal basis, but this was like an entire town full. My entire town changed, if that makes sense. It wasn't. Yes. It was almost my environment, but everything was off, and there were more otherworldly beings, and it was normal to them. I was freaking out. I thought I was going crazy or having some sort of a breakdown, and they're looking at me like I was crazy, like what's wrong with her? So then a few days later, when this probably went on for 3 days, and it was between the 20th and 22nd of 1 year, and when I guess somehow got out of that portal or came back to reality, something happened. There were some people that thought we had been missing for like a week, when I'm like, wait, what? There was only 3 days that went by, and so it was very odd to me that that's the only way I can explain it, because otherwise I don't know what else. I mean, obviously in abductions and things like that, people miss time, but this was different than that. This was
that's really cool. Can I ask you
an entire world?
Let me ask you a couple questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
How did you transfer? I mean, was it conscious? Was it unconscious?
No,
did you feel
it was
anything?
Completely unconscious. No. Yeah, I guess coming back per se, I kind of, there was like I could consciously feel a shift after day 3 or whatever. But before that, absolutely not. Although I was not back then. Back then, I was still very. I did not embrace my gifts. I wasn't. I was very religious. I was very. I wasn't as open-minded and things. So things like that can't. I mean, for a normal person, that could break someone's mind, because there's no explanation for the things that went on. There's no.
Yeah, this is typical of the stories I've read. Like people, like some young girls might be driving, and suddenly the road changes dramatically, or they find themselves on an unpaved area. Or one woman had the same thing. She entered a town that she knew, and it was different. Yeah. And then when she drove back out, things were normal again.
That's sort of like Stranger Things.
Yes.
Yeah, it was like a mirror almost of my town, but there were other things in it. And nothing was the same, nothing. I wouldn't even go to my house during that time. I wouldn't. I was terrified, I didn't know what to do. But it wasn't until I finally left town, and I think that's what did it. I don't know if that's what now looking back, I don't know if that's what caused the shift, or if
did it happen during the daytime or nighttime?
It was during the day. It was during the day.
That's a hell.
And it wasn't on a road. Like I know a lot of people have their experiences driving down a road, and they get sort of like tunnel vision, and then everything shifts.
That's happened before too, but this wasn't. This was a long period of time. People in the real, or I guess this reality, thought we were gone for, like, the school was calling wondering where my kids were at, and one of those was a snow day, so I'm like, they weren't gone, they were only gone a day. What are they talking about? I had no idea. I had
They
no
thought
idea.
you were gone for a week.
Yeah.
See, another time. The time ran differently where you went to.
Right, and to me, it was only a few days,
Yes.
and so it made no sense to me. What had happened or what, and no, it was during the day. We had just gotten back from church, and a lot of, and now that I'm more advanced and actually embracing and working with these things, a lot of people will say, you'll hear about this on different spiritual journeys and retreats and things like that. People purposely and consciously shift into different dimensions.
Yeah.
And there's one thing between shifting into like the fifth dimension and things like that. That's much more attainable for humans. But I'm talking like entire different like different realities.
Yeah.
There's a lot of spiritual people who consciously do that through there's breathing techniques, there's singing, yoga, but it's very advanced in that conscientious ability, I guess.
Right. And the dates you said were around the 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a major holiday?
Nope.
Okay.
I've just noticed, it's the same thing when people get downloads or channeling, or when you have, you'll notice around haunted places or cemeteries or anything like that, certain dates and certain planetary alignment, especially with when you go back into symbols and numbers, numerology and sacred geometry and things like that, if you combine all of that, it creates these portals and vortexes and things. And I'm sure there's much worse to be in, if you accidentally fall into one of those.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I like you said, I had gone through the woods and stuff and ended up a few feet away, or other side of the hill or whatever. That was one thing, but that was within the same few hours. This was an entire this was days, and it wasn't just my imagination. My family, friends, everything were aware of it, like we went somewhere. So
yeah, the Druids celebrate their holidays and say that at those times of the year, there are portals that open between the different dimensions, and I guess modern witchcraft says the same thing.
Yep. This past weekend, Ostera, Yule is the same thing. It's a lot of the equinoxes, but again, that also has to do with the moon and the sun and planetary alignments as well.
That's a fascinating story.
Yeah, that was a pretty interesting story on that one.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Jason, what are your thoughts on the little people and the druids and fairies?
Yeah, Jason.
Well, while we're talking about little people and everything, this takes me back to when I was a kid. We're talking like 30 years ago. My grandma would always tell me about the little people and like leprechauns and stuff that are in the woods. And, now that we're talking about it, I do have some questions, but I remember, we would go in the woods, like searching for them, find the gold, whatever. And I remember there would be like old tree stumps that would have these neatly carved, like it almost looked like seats in them. As weird as that sounds, which everybody probably thinks I'm nuts, but it looked like, if you carved like a mini chair into these stumps of old trees, and then you'd find all these like perfectly round rocks, laid close by and stuff. So you were talking about them being dimensional. Is it possible that some people are more susceptible to seeing these little people from the other dimension, like say, such as my grandma? Because like I said, we're going back 30 years. There wasn't internet and stuff like that to play around with, and I'm sure grandma didn't even know how to use it if it was around, But I'm just kind of wondering if that might be the case. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know. See what you think.
Yeah, Jason, I agree totally. People have different spiritual abilities. Some people are more spiritually evolved than others. And there are many cases of people who see other beings or see little people even today. So I think that's absolutely right. Your grandmother had some type of sight, some type of ability to do that. There's a lot of things in our environment which we don't know because we can't even perceive them.
Right.
Well, sure, why not?
Yeah, it's kind of just coming together, like making sense now, talking to you and hearing about how it's all dimensional. And then it's like, wow, I remember, my grandmother talking about this, 30 years ago when I was a kid, and we were trying to hunt them down and stuff. And I never saw them, but she's seen them, claims to have seen them a few times. So that's really fascinating.
Like one of the anomalies that I'm aware of, I did some research for a book on Bigfoot. Okay. And I'm sure you're all pretty familiar with Bigfoot stories. But if you look at a map of North America, there have actually been thousands of sightings, literally thousands of sightings over the last century of Bigfoot in different places around the country. But there's only a couple of stories of possible places they lived, the shelters they made, and stuff like that. If these Bigfoots exist, how can they not be found? How can they not be observed? Well, you could say, well, all these people were crazy, but several thousand people had to have seen something. Yeah, so where did those beings go?
Yeah, I totally believe that these people have seen Bigfoot, but I'm a little skeptic when you talk about fairies and stuff like that. Like, I can see people actually, I've read stories like Missing 411 and the Canaan Project that they've talked about people actually seeing Bigfoot like up close and personal. They smelt him, they heard it. Right. They've got pictures, but the fairies thing, I cannot.
I got a story.
Oh, everybody get your snacks together.
I got a story.
I got to step off for a second.
Oh.
Okay. I'll wait for you, Martin.
We'll be here.
Well, I'll do I'll do our sponsor while he steps out.
Okay.
We can do that. Didn't mean to do that.
Was that the...
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and do old timey crimey. Let me go ahead and get that.
This segment is brought to you by Old Timey Crimey, a historical true crime podcast hosted by Chrissy and Amber. They have over 150 episodes ranging from the infamous crimes like those of Jack the Ripper. They dig into the wild and weird with details and facts. What I like about this show is their humor and energy while telling a great crime story. There's so many to choose from. If you enjoyed our paranormal investigation shows with crime, history, you're going to love Old Timey Crimey. True crime is better in black and white with over 150 episodes from full length to bonus mini episodes, plenty to binge on. You can find a link on our social media platforms and a sample on our website, Old Timey Crimey, where they know the good old days weren't always good.
And we have one more. Well, might as well do it now and get it out of the way because we need our sponsors and we love our sponsors. So you're going to love them too. Just give me one more second and I'm going to go ahead and do Hydronate. Excuse me. Here we go.
Sound it out.
Sound it out.
If you're having trouble with eating and drinking healthy during your busy day in 2022, I found the product for you. I want to tell you about an electrolyte powder I found. Hydronique Hydration Powder Packets. It's loaded with vitamins and minerals, but with no added sugar. Something that is keto-friendly and healthy. I love the fact that it has elderberry, which has an immune-boosting property for support during cold and flu season. I can bring it to the gym. Its little packets fit right in my gym bag, and you can take it traveling. So it's delicious and leaves me feeling refreshed after a workout instead of drained like I usually do. You can find Hydronique Hydration on Amazon and a link in my bio and website, hydroniquehydration.com. It's packed with minerals and vitamins. Check it out. I give it 5 stars.
Thank you, sponsors.
Yeah.
So where were we, guys?
I have a story.
Yes, you got your story.
Pap's got a story.
Pap
we got our cups of coffee and Rice Krispies treats. We're ready to go.
Okay, go for it.
Good. When I was separated from my wife, I lived over in Pleasant Hills at an apartment complex, and they had out in the complex they had gardens that they planted, tomatoes and stuff like that, flowers and stuff like that, and they had a bench there that you could sit. So my son was about 7 years old, 7 or 8, and we went out there. It was a nice evening, like early middle April. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden he says, Daddy, look at all the little bright lights floating around. Look at all the bright lights that were in this garden, right? And I said, that's pretty interesting. And this is when I was starting to get into the meditation and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, that's crazy. And all you see is these little sprites just going around like this.
I think we heard the story.
Yeah. And then I don't think Marty heard. And then what happened was the next morning we came out and there's a fairy ring, a perfect circle fairy ring with mushrooms.
And that's what they're normally surrounded by, mushrooms, yes.
And then we were up at Gettysburg, me, Russ, and Jan, and a friend of mine, and we were at the RV park, and we woke up, and the next morning there was a fairy ring right next to the RV. So
oh my God.
Then they exist.
Well, here's what you all of you should do because I can see them. If you raise your vibration to their level, a lot of people that makes tired and stuff though, so you have to be careful with that. But if you're in the woods on one of these little adventures and you come upon what you think might be, if you come upon like a tree with a seat carved in it, Jason, or the same thing like a fairy ring or mushrooms, it's much easier to do with bigger trees. So if you see really old hardwood trees in a ring and you start taking pictures, when you even like iPhone has live pictures now, so you can actually slow a lot of times. If you take a picture and you see an orb or something on the live photos, what I've noticed, because you can play that, if you slow it down, you can see them. Because they're any type of interdimensional being. Their Merkaba it's like their light source, their soul source travels faster than the human eye can see. So we just see them as orbs or as like, little light beings. But a camera can capture that now.
When I do that, I see little insects with wings.
When you slow it down.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but
they look like an insect with the wings that you think are.
I'd like to mention about ball lightning, which might be related to this. By the way, if I can mention my website, mkettingtonbooks.com, mkettingtonbooks.com. And my books on this are mainly in the category of legendary beings. Anyway, I did a book on ball lightning. And ball lightning, are you guys familiar with the concept of ball lightning?
No.
Yeah, I've seen it by railroad.
I've heard stories about it.
There are hundreds of years of sightings. Some even go back 1,000 years of people who've seen ball lightning. There's lots of scientific inquiries about ball lightning, especially from Germany. And basically, it's usually during thunderstorms, but not always the case. When these glowing balls appear, and they can float into a house or come up right out of the floor. And there's all sorts of stories about people who've seen ball lightning. There's even some videos on YouTube about ball lightning. Anyway, the reason I mention that is there are also orbs like this that you were talking about, Trish, that are seen in swamps. And there's different phenomena that seem to be related to it. One of the really cool things about ball lightning, not in all cases, but in many cases, people observe them coming up to them, floating there, and then going away. Or
almost like an intelligent.
Yes, these Australians saw a bunch of ball lightnings circle around them for a while and then go off. So there does seem to be some type of intelligence there. And I'm wondering if that might be another form of the fairies or related to the fairies in some manner, because there seems to be some kind of conscious intent there. And so, yeah.
I think it's more maybe spirits. I can see a spirit doing that, but I don't know.
Why if you believe in trees and you have a thing for trees, Jen.
I believe in tree spirits, meaning I believe in human beings.
Then why could you not believe in fairies?
Because fairies is so out there. I mean, I can see like spirits going into like druids, that these old, like a soul that goes into the tree. There was an old story once, sort of like that one movie with a tree, that the boy that came to life from a tree. I wrote a short story about I guess it was a couple, and the husband was a tree. He was like a sort of like a tree trimmer, and he was injured. He cut his arm, and he bled to death. And his blood went into the tree. He became part of the tree. His spirit became part of the tree. Yeah. I can see that, but yeah, fairies. I just can't wrap myself around fairies. When I see the little things flying around, sure, I want to believe they're fairies, but to me, they're insects with wings. Hi, Gina.
What about the tooth fairy?
Yeah,
do you believe in the tooth fairy?
No, I don't believe.
Tell me if I'm wrong here, Trish.
Tooth fairy brings you money.
Yeah, I know.
I got a rich one.
Usually fairies, the lights and stuff like that, they're down close to the ground. They're not up in the sky, correct?
Sean actually saw lightning bugs.
No, because it's more. It's
lightning. I can see lightning bugs.
No.
It's your nature. Like there is a basis of truth. Even cartoons and kid shows now and stuff like The Rocks that, Sean, you were talking about, gargoyles go back. Those are all stone
I believe in gargoyles.
Entities. Now, what movie was it on Trolls where the grandpa's the rocks and they come, they come to life every time she comes around or whatever, things like that. So all of that is related to nature elementals, I guess. So but as far as I was going to say, Jenny, as far as fairies go, I think the problem with humans and not being open-minded about these things is because of Hollywood and everything else and fairy tales, and everybody thinks that fairies are going to be these pretty little sparkly beings. I think if you go into it with an expectation of how they're supposed to look, opposed to, in my belief, I think that all interdimensional beings and spiritual, like fairy tale creatures and stuff like that, I think all of that as extraterrestrials, just different breeds and races.
I can see that. But not just like garden
so
fairies.
If you think of a fairy as like maybe they do look like insects, maybe that's their race. Maybe that's
insects, and I don't see them carrying light streams of light, walking around and decorating the trees outside.
An important aspect of this are trees. Now, a lot of us think that trees have a level of consciousness. Now,
I do.
Have you ever sat down at a very old tree, like an old oak, and meditated, trying to feel the consciousness of it? I've done this on the base of sequoias and redwoods out here in California. And I can tell you that you start to feel the wisdom of one of these beings that's thousands of years old.
And they can heal you too. They can heal you.
They can. It's been proven by science now that trees can 100% communicate as well.
Absolutely. I've communicated with one.
Well, no.
All of your plants can.
Do you think the trees could make stuff happen like in the movie The Happening?
Yeah.
Like emit a chemical and make people just like kill themselves?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, think about it. Trees were here on Earth millions of years ago before man existed. And trees have a different vibrational level, I'd say. But if trees are conscious, maybe they're also evolved, intelligent beings. And that could be a big reason why the Druids use them in a lot of their rituals.
Right.
Because different trees have different properties.
Sean, what if that means that like houses are actually haunted from tree spirits and not people spirits? Because houses are made of wood.
Very possible, brother.
That's what I was going to say. Because
we might find Groot.
Okay. Well, if you think of like a human, a human like a woman, right? When we have babies, even whether they even if a person were to have like a miscarriage or stillbirth or whatever, during that time we actually are connected. They create brain cells that travel like to that woman's brain cells that's held there her entire life. So she will always have that connection regardless. That's actually a recent discovery in science. So if you think of trees in the same aspect, as far as every little splinter, every branch, every piece of wood that's been made, into something else, and that's a lot of the Druid beliefs in which witches and everything else, why we're very mindful of the wood we burn or houses or whatever is built by them, because that energy is carried on. So if a person is hung from a tree, anything created from that tree is essentially going to have a negative energy. Anything, even going back in the days when they used to stake people on trees, same thing. They have found bodies buried in trees, so a house, say somebody was hung from a tree, or it was a hanging tree, and many people were hung from it back in the day, and then they cut it down and they built a house from it. Of course that house is going to be haunted.
Damn straight. I agree. And I know that trees have feelings too, and this is a true story. So I go out to South Park and I meditate out there, and I was sitting under not an oak tree, but it was a locust tree. It was, and it was like 80 degrees, no rain, nothing like that, and it was a beautiful evening. And so I'm there meditating, and all of a sudden, I feel drops of water coming on my head. Right? I'm thinking, what the hell, is it raining? It wasn't raining. And I believe that tree was sorrow and that tree was crying. I really believe that.
I've heard of stuff like that.
Oh yeah. I can see that, because I was trying to tell you guys before the show, I used to have a sunset maple tree that I adored. I mean, this tree, just I wanted to be next to it. I wanted to touch it. We had to cut it down because it got struck by lightning. We tried everything to save the tree, and there was so much sorrow when we had to have them come and cut it down. The clouds broke open and it rained like crazy, but I was so heartbroken. It was like my best friend died. I mean, I was very depressed over it. I cried. And then when we were going back over to look at the trees, I want to share this picture with Marty. Do you see a face? I see two faces in this tree. This is a tree, and this is my tree that I love. But I'm going to see if you can see the. Do you see the two faces in the tree?
I'm waiting.
Can you see it?
Can you bring it in, Jen?
Yes, I see the face in front for sure.
I see two faces in this tree. I see one here, and then I see one here. But this is the tree that
you didn't cut that? That looks like a real face.
No, we end up cutting down the whole tree. There was nothing left from the tree. There was nothing left. And there's another picture where it was struck by lightning, and we tried to save the tree. Let me see if I can pull that one up.
That's the most coherent face in a tree I've ever seen. That's really...
it's kind of scary, isn't it? But there's another one that we let me see if I can pull that one up. The tree, this is the tree. This is where we tried to save the tree. I don't know if you can see a Band-Aid that we made.
Oh, I did that to one in my backyard, ratchet strap.
I was so upset when we had to cut this tree down, but I'm telling you, this tree healed my legs. My legs were numb. My dog flipped me in the yard. Did you ever have one of those retractable leashes? And he saw a rabbit, and it took off. And I literally, you see those videos where the people actually go midair and they flip up and hit the back. That's what happened to me. And my legs were numb for like 2 years. And then I was watching that movie with who was that one woman? Jennifer Gardner was starring in it. her daughter fell through the hollow of the tree and was healed. So I went outside and I said, what if this would happen with me? So I said, what if I just touched the tree? So I touched the tree and I said to myself, I believe you can heal me, just like your branches are antennas to heaven. So I looked up, and the next day, on the part where I touched the tree, there was an eye. And then when I went closer to the tree, I saw like a like a face on the tree.
Oh, wow.
And it was so amazing that, and I said, you know what, I'm going to get on the elliptical. And I got on the elliptical that day, and my legs weren't numb. And I did it again the next day and the next day. And from that day forward, my legs have never been numb. So I truly believe that tree, whatever was in that tree, a spirit, I don't know, maybe it was just a coincidence, but I don't believe in coincidences. I think something happened, that there was a spirit in that tree, because I was drawn to that tree. I mean, really drawn to that tree. Like every time I would go outside, I'd hug it.
That's okay.
You guys have some cool stories. Yeah. You don't need me here. You've got your own story.
Yeah, I could tell you a few more, but I won't.
I don't know if you recall, but when I was here a couple months ago, we talked about immortality. The guy who claimed he was the immortal, 2,800 years old, told me, and I have it written in the book, that one of the ways to achieve immortality is to sit in an old grove of trees and meditate there and let the spirit of the area enter you, that ancient spirit of health and life enter you. That there's so much more we could do with trees, I believe, than we do.
Oh, they can heal cancer, I believe. I truly believe, because the roots go, like Chris said, they go so deep into the core of the earth, where all the electromagnetic, everything is in there. And I truly believe that's why earth too. I earth. I have an earthing pad in my bed. As soon as the weather gets nice, I have my earthing shoes that I got, and I go out there in my bare feet. I actually earth probably up until it actually snowed, that I went in my bare feet in the ice and the snow. Yeah, I truly believe in that.
Forest bathing.
A couple of the exercises in my Druid book are about meditating and feeling yourself putting spiritual roots into the ground and connecting
through your feet.
Energy.
Most definitely. I put my feet on the tree trunks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Bare feet. The hands, you put your hands and your feet on it. And I tell you what, if you're having a bad day, you won't have it. They'll totally go away. If you're depressed, go outside, touch a tree, and it'll make you feel 100% better. Totally.
I will say, before that thing happened where I went into some other dimension, right before that, I used to run on these trails by a lake I lived near, and there was a tree that had been I think I've told this before. I don't think you were here, Marty. But there was a tree that had been one of the branches had been scraped by a deer or an elk, when they rub their antlers against them. And I put my hand on that because I felt really, I felt like I was the same way as you, Jenny. I was really drawn to this specific tree on this trail that I always ran. And I felt bad for the tree. I felt like the tree was hurting in some way. So I put my hand on it. And this was the first time I had ever communicated with a plant. It said, "We will miss you." And I'm like,
oh, wow.
Oh,
miss
yeah.
What? What? I was like, what is that? What is it talking about? This isn't the tree. This is a different one. But I was like, hey, you'll miss me. What does that mean? And it said something about come back one day. And I had no idea what this meant. It was after, I skipped dimensions there, that we ended up moving because I was terrified of whatever happened. We left that town, but I had no idea, obviously, prior when I was running on that trail that I was going to be moving. So, but the tree knew. So, but I promised I would go back one day. So that
is so cool. Here's a thought for you. What if trees have something to do with us crossing dimensions?
Maybe.
That's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Well, look at all if you're crossing, you're going through a portal. Now look at all the trees out there in the Pacific Northwest. Okay. There's a ton of trees out there.
They're beautiful trees.
Yes. Or the Appalachian Mountains too. You know,
Yeah.
They could talk.
Oh yeah.
Well,
so do we think that trees that people plant, you know, and grow them, make them grow faster to use them for, you know, construction purposes or whatever, do those trees possibly have spirits, or is that more of like the wild ones? Do you know what I mean?
I think all trees have some level of spirit. I'm one of these people who believes that everything in our environment has some level of consciousness if we can connect to it. And I think trees certainly have a spirit. Now, the older the trees and the bigger the trees, the more intelligence, the more conscious they are. But I think every tree is conscious at some level that you could connect to it.
And the thing about trees in the forest, it's just like people, you know, people who live in the forest are more connected to spirituality and the source and everything because it's not it's all, they're further away from man-made environments. You know, they're further away from the asphalt forest, so there's not a lot of pollution as far as electronics and things like that. However, yes, your house plants even have spirits, you know. So, but I think when you say that you think they're connected more to other dimensions, there's a show. I don't know if y'all have it. I talked about this last night on my show called Once Upon a Time, and all these modern fairy tale creatures, they go through the trees, right? They use the trees to time travel, essentially, back to different.
Yeah, I love that show, and I loved how they do that. I mean, I believe that you're right. They probably could do something like that or something.
And that was I was like, that makes a lot of sense actually, because who knows? I mean, and there's so many things that have lived in trees. Now the sad thing when you talk about you know, like the redwood forest and the forest on the coast and stuff, I don't know how many people know about it, but a huge problem right now are succulents, for instance. People are over harvesting these succulents from California, Oregon, places like that. Well, succulents, because they think they're going to be more, and they're selling them at higher prices because they're from these big forests, but that's the ground cover for these big forests, which provide nutrients for the trees and protect, you know, all the roots and everything else. So when you take that away, they're more susceptible to forest fires and everything else because they don't have that moisture. And it's a huge problem this year. I don't know how many people are aware of that, because succulents, especially this time of year, everybody starts selling them like crazy just for decoration, gifts, and whatever.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know about that specifically. Out here in California, they mostly blame the power company for starting all the forest fires.
It's in California. It's a new thing. Well, I mean, it's not a new thing. People have been harvesting them forever, but now they're marketing them as specifically being from those forests, so people think they're more powerful or whatever for their spiritual purposes. But I don't think a lot of people research the sustainability, you know, what damage, where your organic products are coming from or whatever, because a lot of those are doing more harm than good, because you could go grow your own full garden of succulents really easily. But, you know, over harvesting them from places like that and destroying the forest is another thing.
Yeah, I know when I was a Boy Scout, and I spent many years in the Boy Scouts and later became an Eagle Scout, we spent so much time outdoors on backpacking trips and camping. I always loved it because I always felt the vibrancy of the environment, all the living trees and plants and animals. And we lose a lot of that living in cities. It's nice if you live in a place where you can get out to forests and the trees in a shorter period of time and enjoy all that again. I know we've gotten way off the original topic.
Well, maybe we're supposed to talk about trees. You know,
so here's something interesting. So check this out. So a buddy of mine, we were just chit-chatting the other day and talking about some stuff, and he was telling me when he was a kid, there was this guy that we know. Obviously, I won't give any names or anything, but this gentleman, for years was a great guy, all this stuff, and then he took a turn for the dark side, and he was getting into some pretty serious stuff like casting spells and everything, and he wanted to summon a certain 3 demons. Now, in summoning these demons, they don't want to be summoned because they're way out in the universe. They want nothing to do with you, so they will kill you. This is what the belief is. So his way of getting around this was going into the woods, deep into the woods, where there's nothing but like old trees, for a period of 2 to 3 months with no contact with civilization, nothing. He was just straight up like going out into the woods, because it takes that amount of time to see and connect with your guardian angel. So in order to summon these demons, he has to have his guardian angel to protect them from them killing him. But you figure, like, why couldn't you do that like in your house or whatever or anything? But it was specifically deep in the woods, with old trees and landscape, and nothing else. So, that really kind of makes you think, like, what parts of the trees play into that with is it they just pull so much spiritual energy that, eventually the guardian angel would show up, or I'd like to know the theory behind that, how that all works out.
That's a good question. My first guess would be just that in communing with nature, he felt a lot of different spirits, and it helped him get into a more spiritual state to do that connection. Although I think vibrationally, we can connect to higher level beings or lower level beings, depending on what we're trying to do. I personally, being more focused on pure spirituality and not any particular path, believe that we can connect to any entity that we want, and that we can keep ourselves in a high level state or a lower level state just based on our desire. And it's much better to be in a higher level state, but certainly a person could connect with a very low level demon if you wanted, and call it, whether it's from another dimension or something like that. I don't know. I mean,
I definitely wouldn't be messing with that. But
you remember my story about we trapped the ghost and it attacked us.
Yeah.
And I like Trisha's comment about the bottle of water that other witches know about. But I believe that we are spiritual beings first, and we can connect to any type of consciousness in our universe or a different universe through our will. It's all a matter of what type of consciousness are we trying to be? What type of spirituality are we trying to have? And that's what determines what we end up doing. I know that sounds like a blather, but that was kind of like.
Well, and so in some forms of witchcraft and some beliefs, there's a lot of demons are just considered another entity that a lot of witches can work with or whatever. So I don't, and that's not necessarily, a lot of them work with them for good purposes. It's perspective, but yes, there are some very bad ones. So a lot of witches come back and they're like, I guess the newer generations start working with these demons, and when they get into trouble is when they start doing certain rituals or making promises or what. And you don't want to make a promise with a demon. I mean, that's that might cross lifetimes of, so you got to be careful with that. But yes, that's been in many civilizations and cultures throughout time. But it's perspective again.
Yes. So
it is dangerous to change your vibration, though.
Going back to the little people again, I think They existed before us, and they may have existed many thousands or hundreds of thousands of years before us, and they had time to evolve, and they had time to achieve higher levels of consciousness, and that gave them the abilities to, I think, shift dimensions, to make themselves invisible, to do other things, a lot of which are the claims of people who've written about their experiences with the leprechauns or with the fairies or with the little people. And that's my own, again, theory. I don't have any evidence to back that up.
Marty, why do you believe that the little people existed before man? Why did you believe that? Or why do you believe that?
Well, I go back to the Flores evidence, which again may be questionable, but they show they lived 50,000 years ago and no later. So they certainly existed back then, if you believe the Flores findings. And then all the evidence from different cultures around the world, the American Indian tribes, the Hawaiians, in Germany, in the British Isles, in the Middle East, jinns. And there's similar stories. I look for the patterns. I always, everything I study and research, I look for patterns. And you don't find, let me put it in a positive way, you find patterns among things that people have seen or experienced. I don't think they would just make these things up. And many of these stories had them at about 3 feet tall. So I tend to think there was some type of being that existed or has existed on our earth that was around 3 feet tall, that lived way back in prehistoric ancient times.
Well, don't you think it could be just folklore? That you said they don't make things up.
Where does folklore come from? Folklore comes from myths that people have told over eons.
Stories or anything like that? I mean,
well, yeah, but they originate somewhere. Why do American Indians have the same beliefs as people in Ireland or Wales? Why do different countries around the world have beliefs in little people? And same thing for the big ones, like the Bigfoot. Why do people all over the world see Bigfoots? They didn't just make it up. I'm one of those people who believes most people really do see something when they make a report, whether it's a UFO or an alien or some other being. They've seen something because they were vibrationally attuned to see that. And it's not their imagination. Now, they may question themselves being told by other people that they're crazy and so shut up about it. But people see lots of things. We have a way to attune to things in our environment which is much greater than is thought possible. And does that make sense, Jen?
Sort of. I mean, I'm still on the fence about the little people. I can see as a tribe somewhere, like you said, in Indonesia, that there could be a tribe of little people. Was this a genetic flaw? Was this anonymous? You know what I'm saying? How do we know it's just not some kind of genetic defect that makes
you might think it's just that local tribe, but again, I go back to the stories of little people being seen all over the world for centuries. I mean, it's like the myth of the flood. The flood is reported all over the world. Now, something happened. Something happened all over the world that people reported. Otherwise, they wouldn't have all had this flood myth. So I think it's similar to experiences with little people.
When we think of going back to my first couple questions about proportional sizes, I mean, because there's dwarfs that they're just oddly, the larger head and smaller limbs. But right. You're telling me that these little people are proportioned. They're just very small, 3 feet tall people.
They might be proportioned different in different places.
So since I've been doing some research on, I'm a historical medium, meaning I communicate with very old spirits. And one time recently, I'll have to bring it up sometime if I can find it. I was drawn back to a newspaper from the late 1800s, early 1900s of some of the circuses. And these circuses had, they had a Cyclops man. They had a 3-foot person that was one of the performers there. They had a 8.5-foot person that was, and it was all over the world. there wasn't just like one traveling circus in
sort
the
of
US.
like the movie Big Fish.
But these people actually existed. I mean, they were considered by society as freaks of nature. But
the bearded woman.
There's got to be, it is so astonishing to me and profound that as humans, as Marty was saying, it has UFOs and the existence of winged creatures and other beings has been documented in hieroglyphics, in cave drawings, and everything else, in every single civilization, every single religion, every single culture across the entire world since the beginning of time, and nobody still believes it, even in the Bible for that matter. So it's crazy to me that something that has so many witnesses is the thing that nobody believes.
And then it goes back to saying that, okay, if I do say this and tell people about it, right, then I'm a nut. And then back in the third, think about it, right? Look at all the asylums back in the 30s and 40s. I mean, people would see.
Well, seriously, if I heard somebody told me they saw and talked to fairies, I'd start to question their sanity.
No, not the fairies, anything like that. They would put people in asylums because they had a gift that they could see things.
Sort of like
Yes, I believe many gifted people were tortured in asylums because they were different.
Yeah, I happen to believe that a lot of people who are in mental asylums have a lot of spiritual abilities, but they can't control them.
Right.
And therefore they let it affect them, their mind, and then they tell stories and the doctors think, okay, we've got a wacko here. But I think
because some people that they do. I mean, there's a lot of schizophrenics that believe that they talk to aliens and people, the men in black are after. They are schizophrenic.
I'm not doubting that. I'm certain a lot of those people are, but again, a lot of them I think are very spiritually perceptive.
And I knew a few.
They don't know how to control it. They don't know how to control it.
But my thing is, at what point in our timeline? That's what I'm saying. Did the shift of throwing people in an asylum happen? Because even in medieval times, they considered those people gifted. They considered those people that would have otherwise, even the people in these newspapers that were in these circuses and stuff, they considered them fascinating humans and not, it wasn't someone they were going to throw in a mental institution. It was someone they wanted to be it was intriguing. It wasn't until more modern times that we considered people like that crazy. That's what I'm saying, because in medieval times, magic was huge. Kings, everything, royalty. Egyptian times, same thing.
In the Bible,
all used dragons and mages and sages and all of that, and wizards assisting them. Trees.
I think it has a lot to do with the use of the scientific method. The way people have the scientific method, if they can't measure something, they say that something doesn't exist. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means you don't have the instruments to measure it.
Witchcraft is a lot different than seeing fairies.
Why? We work with fairies.
Well, because I don't know. I mean, witchcraft is so much different. Like it's been said in the Bible, there was witchcraft, and there was kings that actually went to the the I don't know what you want witches to get advice on war. I mean, but I don't see them ever going there and talking about fairies.
Why not?
I don't know. I'm just saying. I don't have any knowledge.
Maybe
of
fairies
reading
maybe they were angels.
Yeah.
I think in our modern society, the people who are scientifically minded, remember, I'm an engineer and I was trained in a lot of science like physics. A lot of those people don't believe in something unless it can be scientifically proven.
Yeah, my son.
And that attitude has been going on for hundreds of years now, since the scientific method really started paying off. And the technology developed as a result has definitely helped our society immensely. You can't argue with that. But it closes people off. It helps them, keeps them from their mind about things that are not well understood.
Absolutely.
And one of let me just elaborate for a second. I wrote a lot about how to use the scientific method to measure the paranormal. And the issue is a lot of the things that are unknown today are things that we can't measure properly because we don't have the instruments to do it. And maybe people's perceptions could also be instruments. And that's something I get into in the book. But again, the problem with many people who are scientifically and technically trained is unless something is proven by a scientific experiment, to them it doesn't exist. And to me, that's extremely narrow-minded. It's extremely narrow-minded about our consciousness, about our spiritual aspects, which I know from personal experience.
A little bit off the subject, and I will say it was my son growing up. I mean, he went to church with his mom every Sunday, was an altar boy, the whole 9 yards. And then he got into the scientific field, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he don't believe in God no more.
That's a problem with a lot of people.
You know what I mean? So, and it killed her. It killed his mom, you know. But I see it happening, and it's true. He don't.
Young Sheldon doesn't believe in God.
Oh, come on.
No, it's very common. I love that show. In fact, like a lot of the entrepreneurs and scientists today are talking about longevity and immortality, and they think it's all a physical thing. My own beliefs is that there's a big spiritual aspect to it too. And I've had enough spiritual experiences, to totally believe in the spirit and consciousness being aside from our body. But many people never have those experiences. And in our modern society, they just poo-poo the whole idea of God. They poo-poo the whole idea of consciousness being there and separate from our bodies, or being integrated with an eternal spirit. So, yes, I understand where you're coming from, Sean.
Yeah.
Somebody had to create all this.
There's as far as, needing to have proof, there's a lot of things we haven't seen that we believe in, though. I mean, I've never seen a hurricane, but apparently those exist. It's like, right. So it doesn't make sense to me that, but the thing is, there's, like you said, there's proof now, especially with modern technology, of all these things. I even had, going back to, I can't think of who's producing. I know Marvel is coming out with the multiverse, right, in a few months, I think, and it made me think of different portals and everything. And when we're trying to figure out how all of these things are at different parts of the world and different cultures and all of that, well, as far as my beliefs, we have an entire collective consciousness. So when there's an idea, it's kind of like the more energy put into that, it grows, obviously. But a perspective based on your environment is going to be different in those different parts of the world. That's where you get similar religions, but in different parts, or the pyramids looking almost identical, but like different decor in different parts of the world. But then it occurred to me, as far as these portals and vortexes and stuff and mirrors, when we talk about mirrors, I know when you go to, if you ever go to like pagan or witches retreats and things like that, they'll have mirrors in the forests and stuff.
Yeah.
Now, what is really disturbing to me, I had this epiphany today, kind of a vision. These new telescopes they've put in the sky, these new mirrors they're putting in the sky. What if that's creating, that could 100%, whoever, and especially whoever controls that could give a lot of power to different dimensions, different portals, because it is literally mirroring back to Earth.
No, I didn't know that.
So, and that's scary. Mm-hmm. And that's a scary thing.
Thought. Interesting.
Because it's a giant mirror, kind of like the ocean. The ocean, that's why a lot of people say they see UFOs going in and out of water. Water reflects, right? So that's another mirror. That's essentially, that's how it's another portal.
Exactly.
I just want to pause real quick and thank our sponsor, Carnation, for sponsoring the second hour of Chasing Prophecy. Thank you, Carnation.
Thank you, Carnation.
Thank you, Carnation.
Yeah.
Well done, Jenny. Well done.
A lot to take in. A lot of information.
This show is very important, really, because you cover a lot of out-of-the-box subjects which have some validity, and it helps people open their minds about what is possible. because in our society, we're taught to have really closed minds about the unknown, about what's possible. And a lot of people then form their own mental framework of the world based on that. And then they become closed minded to some of these concepts. Right. So I think this is very valuable what you guys do.
Well, we have a motto in PPS, and it's simple. We will respect what you believe in. Just please respect what I believe in, what we believe in. You know what I mean? And go from there. I'm not going to try to force you, Marty, scenario. I'm not going to try to force you and pound paranormal into your brain where you know that, I don't think so. But I respect what you believe in, just as long as you respect what we believe in.
Sure.
I mean, you figure, all the dimensional stuff and, little people and everything come from other dimensions. Just because we don't see it doesn't mean it's not real. Because take, for example, like your cell phone, when you call somebody, you're sending out waves. Can we see it? No, but obviously it works because the other person on the other line will pick up. So it's just all energy and, so it's very well, all those dimensions and all the things that we talk about could highly be, 100% real.
It's like convincing an atheist to believe in the Almighty.
Exactly.
We don't see one of the biggest, especially most recently, we are most afraid. There is a great fear of something we don't see ever in this world in the last few years. Viruses and bacteria are technically living, evolving, microscopic things.
But you can't see them under a microscope.
How do you know? I mean, I'm sure you could see a fairy under a microscope. You know what I mean? But
that's what I'm saying. Like a little fly with wings.
That's what I'm saying. So as paganism and witchcraft,
my goodness gracious.
We
Get
think,
your bug light out, Jenny.
Yeah.
As above, so below. And if you think about it, that's like I was talking about with the giant microscope or the giant telescope in the sky, or microscope or whatever they have. That's a giant. Remember the movie Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? Same concept. That is basically a giant microscope looking at the Earth. And then on the Earth, you have other microscopes looking at states. And then you have what are satellites? Same thing. Then you have other microscopes looking at people. And then it's all goes down to all the way to your science class, And so especially if you ever saw Men in Black, where like the cat was wearing an entire universe on its collar.
Yes.
How do we know that doesn't actually happen? And that'd be tiny people,
Very good point. Yeah, when I went to engineering school, and it's probably still the same, a lot of people believe they could learn everything about our universe and our world through engineering and science. And what I realized after getting my degree, which was engineering science, a lot of physics involved, a lot of nuclear engineering, was that we know very little. We know a very little bit about our world. There's a lot of unknown things, and we try to ignore them because it doesn't fit with our concept of how the world works. And we really need to be more open-minded. And that, I guess, that's one reason I pursued a lot about the paranormal and spiritual things in my life, because I felt there was a whole lot more out there to understand. And yes, I've been proven correct. And I'm much happier, I think, as a result. So anyway, the little people are an exciting topic, whether you believe them or not. But I think the point that people should get from this is to be open-minded about what they see, open-minded about things they hear, and not just let the other people tell them that they're nuts.
Yes.
You should value your perceptions, because you may be perceiving something other people don't. And you should have confidence in that and save it and tell people who will understand you.
I tell people that all the time going into paranormal investigations, to not expect or have an expectation of what everyone else has seen or heard or whatever at that specific place. Because then sometimes if you're looking specifically for one, it's like the law of attraction. If you're looking just for that one thing, you're going to miss all the other things.
Right. But that's my theme. I try and explore a lot of the out of the box subjects out there. And I find more and more every day. And the more I think I know, the more I realize that I don't know. And if I can mention my website one more time.
Absolutely.
mkettingtonbooks.com at mkettingtonbooks.com. I've got a lot of categories of books there: spiritual, paranormal, UFOs and aliens, and everything to do with the little people and legendary beings and all that type of thing. And that's stuff I really enjoy
books there.
I really enjoy that stuff.
A lot.
And in fact, one of the things I've worked on in my last couple of books is a paradigm for how do you tell the truth about yourself and your relationships and the world. And there's a lot of techniques you can use to do that, to figure out what's real and what's just misleading. Because I think a lot of our educational system and our government tries to suppress creative thought, tries to suppress how we think. And we need to fight against that. We need to be open-minded and think outside of the box and it'll make us happier too. I'm getting way off the track. I know that.
No, you're not. No, no, absolutely. You have a lot of books out there to read. I mean, you can spend a long time on your Amazon page looking at all your different books. But thank you so much for joining us again tonight.
Thank you, Martin, for coming to Torture Tuesday.
I always enjoy being with you. You're a great bunch of people. I think you're doing an important mission, and I just enjoy so much sitting here and chatting with you. So thanks.
Same to you.
Same to you.
Enjoy the rest of the week, Marty.
Okay, you guys too.
Bye.
That was enjoyable.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, it was very enjoyable. Yeah. He does have a lot of books out there. I mean, I don't know where he finds the time to write them all. I'll tell you that. I have a hard time just concentrating on one.
Well, you got to focus.
Oh, yeah. I got to focus.
Drink some focus and focus.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, drink focus.
Help you focus.
Focus. Yeah, so you guys ready for off topics?
Oh, yeah, I guess.
I got to hear what Paps is.
Well, I'll go first because I was watching a new series on Peacock. Did you guys happen to watch the Tiger King on Netflix documentary?
Yeah, no, I think he's an ass. No.
Oh man, it was so good.
I watched it. Yeah,
it was so good. Well, there's a new series on Peacock. And it goes behind. Now, I didn't watch the documentary. I flipped through them on Netflix. But when I watched the series, it made me want to go back and watch the documentary. So I'm doing that now. And I was fascinated because I want a tiger. And
that long-haired guy, he died. Did you know that?
Which one?
I can't remember his name.
The long-haired guy. You mean the one that was the guy that fed he was the one that fed them?
Yeah, he was real cool.
How did he die?
I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was him out of the crew, but it was on the news or something a long time ago.
I didn't hear about that one.
Yeah.
But it's really worth it. I didn't even know there was this battle going between Joe. I'm not sure how he pronounces his name. I know chasing something. It's an Italian name, but him and Carol Bassett was so much. There was so on. Yeah, what is that? They were having this battle. I never knew that happened. Like, where was I back then? Because it was all over the news. I heard. Did you guys didn't hear? I mean,
I heard about it in the news, but
do you remember it when it was happening, like in 2020?
No, I don't watch the news. I wasn't even interested in it. I thought it was a bunch of
well, you know what? I wasn't either, but I didn't know that there were
a bunch of tiger crap, Pap.
Well, I didn't know that they had these zoos that they bred the tigers, and I didn't know there was such a, like the activists that were trying, like PETA was trying to take them down. And why would this woman, Carol Bassett, want to destroy his life like that? I watched the movie and then I went back and looked at the documentary. I never saw him hurting the tigers. They weren't being mistreated. They had a lot of room to run. It's like, why did she just do it for?
I don't know. Her husband disappeared, and a lot of people think that she fed him to the tigers.
Yeah,
maybe she did. The first, it was just I thought it was
hates men,
No, because she had a really good third marriage, though. I don't know. I thought it was fascinating that, people actually did that. They raised, they bred the tigers, and then I didn't know there was all these zoos all over the place. I didn't know they wanted to check them out, but it was a good series.
Cool.
I would watch it, but that was one of my off topics, and the fact that there's a new world order that Biden wants to create. You have to go into the new world. Trish, I'm surprised you don't know about that.
The new world order.
Yeah,
from WCW.
They want to start a new world order. They want to tear down. They said that's exactly what they're doing now. Tear down what we have now to make this new world order.
It's not going to happen.
One currency.
Hasn't that been in talks since the beginning of time?
Yes, it's not going to happen, Jen. I don't know. I don't believe it. No, bullshit. No.
There's too much greed out there.
Biden actually said it the other day, yesterday.
Well, I'm not even.
But that was an off topic because I just thought
Pat's
it was
getting all flustered.
Let's talk about fairies, okay?
No, I want to talk about my off topic is we subscribe to a British TV station. It's called BritBox. Has anyone ever heard of it?
Mm-hmm.
And
I've heard of that actually.
Yeah, and they have some pretty cool shows on there. They really do. But the only problem is you can't understand what they're saying.
I can't understand them. I
it's hard.
Understand the Brits when
turn
they
the captions on.
Oh man, I think the captions have a hard time. Yeah, we tried it one time and the captions were way off. They couldn't understand.
Yeah, Sean, I tried to. The one show that I could understand was Downton Abbey. I could understand that because they didn't have that. There's certain dialects in Brit that there's the slummy part, like the what do they call it? Come on, you know what I'm talking about. They have a different accent.
Gaelic.
Gaelic.
Cow.
It's not the real, it's the lower class section of Britain.
Yeah.
That has, I don't know if it's Liverpool that has a really hard dialect.
I think it's Manchester. Manchester has the hard dialect.
Yeah, it's just so hard to understand.
And so, but I have one complaint about it now with what's going on over in Ukraine. We have a hard time getting it because I do believe that there's really crappy internet service over in that area. So every time that we turn it on, I have to go through and put numbers and letters in order to get this.
Recently, they've been, because of the conflicts, they've been blocking a lot of internet stuff from that part of the world. So
yeah.
Well, that was a nice topic.
My off topic was, which I've thought about this a lot, especially since we're getting into tornado and rainy season everywhere and stuff. So cemeteries, right? And there was a time in Kansas, and if I could think of the town that I was in, because it was flooding one time, and we came upon this, I was with a friend, we came upon this town, and the lady said, we were lost because we couldn't go through roads. They had closed off roads. We had to take other ones. And due to the storms, GPS and things like that didn't work. And we came to this little tiny town, and this lady said she was there to see the graves and the bodies floating up at the cemetery. We're like, what? What? We're like, what cemetery? And where are these bodies? Because there was so much water that they were actually raising it was a really old cemetery, I guess. And we couldn't get there. We didn't know where it was at. So I didn't actually see it. But that made me think of like New Orleans, the graves that are above ground that they did because of the flood or, the water and stuff. Do you all think? So to me, it's odd that we don't bury people, and it's a lot of native and shamanic and pagan beliefs. We believe that your body goes back in the ground to give back to the earth after you die. So it's interesting to me. Do you think when they are buried above ground, they're stuck there? They're not connected to source because they are literally put above ground for eternity in their graves. They're not buried. They're not back in the earth. They're not able to rebirth that cycle. So
That's
do you
weird.
think that keeps any of them in these mausoleums and stuff? Do you think it keeps those souls? And maybe back then that's why they did that, because New Orleans was a town of vampires and everything else.
I don't
Do you
know.
think their souls are stuck because they're less connected to the earth?
No, their souls go no matter where they're at. I
you know what? I'm gonna have honestly, Trish.
Because they can't think about that. Their roots, like they're not
Right.
back. Even if someone is cremated and you scatter their ashes, it goes back into the wind. It's carried by the wind, the soil, the water, whatever you do with them.
And when Jesus comes back, they'll go up as cigarettes.
No.
but I'm saying they're not. They're
Right.
They're like entombed above ground, and they have no way of connecting to.
I think your soul can just get out of there. I don't think it's trapped.
Ooh,
well,
that's for another show. That one.
Jason, I just had this like dream about this the other day. So
that's interesting.
That's my.
Let me think about that seriously, Trish. I'll get back to you on that next week. Jason, what's yours?
Mine is actually an experience I had this week. It was kind of neat. It was changing from time zones. So, well, no, it's because I'm a mobile welder, and me and my business partner, we get called out to go sometimes states, hours away. Well, this job was on the Illinois-Indiana border. Like, we were only half an hour south of Chicago or whatever. So we left Sunday around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And, the GPS, says we were going to arrive at the hotel by 11:50. So we were driving and driving and driving. Nothing's changing, no clocks or nothing. We didn't even think about it. So we get pretty close out there. And it's like, okay, 11:50. It looks like we got about an hour left. And stop, get gas, shut the truck off and everything, get back in. And all of a sudden, we're like only 20 minutes away. And it was saying like 10 something. And we're like, I'm looking at him. He's looking at me like, this is weird, because his phone was saying the time zone from, back our way. And then mine jumped ahead, and the GPS had no idea what was going on, it seemed like. So we had no clue what we were doing. So we get to the hotel. Nobody knows what time it is. All the clocks are different. Even the alarm clock in the hotel room was saying something else from my phone, his phone. So we're like, well, hopefully we get to the job at the right time. But it was weird, because it was almost like felt like a time warp almost. Like the hour disappeared, and I'm wondering, was that like relatively the exact point where the time zone for that hour changes? You know what I mean? Like as you start going west, it's an hour, then 2 hours and 3 hours. Like I'm wondering if that was pretty much dead on where that was. But then when we left, as soon as we got in the truck to leave the job, the clocks were all saying back home's time. Like nothing ever happened.
Did you ever change your clock?
Like, what is going on? Well, it's all from satellite, so the GPS and everything. So it was just really confusing. We had no idea. So we're like calling home, like, hey, what time is it there? So we know what time we're actually getting home.
Have you ever crossed flown across or been in a boat or whatever across the international date line?
Yes.
It's weird. Like there's a I don't know. It's like you can feel it or something.
When I was in the Navy, when we did it, we sailed around the world, and every day we would have to move the clocks up. Every day, you know what I mean? And while we were going, we always set them back. But coming home, every day we set them up an hour every day.
See, I felt like it was like some Back to the Future stuff, because it was like we just had daylight savings last weekend. Then we're driving and we're losing hours. Nobody knows what time it is. And then we leave, and then it's a different hour. And it's like, I don't even know what's going on at this
Did
point.
it screw up your sleep?
That's always screwed up. So I don't think it really makes a difference. I was just trying to set my alarms for the right time.
Cool.
I've noticed, a lot of times that happens during retrogrades and stuff. And there's not just Mercury, there's other planets that go into retrograde. But I've noticed that if during those times, I'm like, well, wait a minute, that's when like my calendar's off, that I always change and things like that happen. I'm like, wait, I didn't set my alarm for that time, things like that.
I want to just make a real quick pause. I want to talk about two fellas that I met, and I want to thank them for this part of this last part of the show. Just give me one.
Me and Sean say you're welcome, Jenny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're welcome, I found, and they're sponsoring this part of the show. And they have a YouTube channel too, which I find to be very scary. I checked them out, so I want you guys to check them out too. And thank you for sponsoring this part of the show. Before we say goodbye, I want to mention them. The new reality paranormal featured empath and sensitive Cody Fortune and medium Sean Adam. They take you along on a terrifying investigation of the farmhouse, a sinister building with a past of bloodshed and pain. As they investigate the crumbling building, their equipment picks up unimaginable responses. You know how that is, Sean and Jason, voices, shadow people, and much more. And I want you to check out their YouTube channel. I found it to be so interesting and so scary. Some of the stuff they pick up is really cool. The New Reality Paranormal YouTube page, subscribe, check out their book. I have a link on the website and in the bio and show notes. And you can find it on Amazon, on The Farmhouse. And that is so cool. But I want to thank you guys again. We're going to try to get them on the show. That's going to be cool. So hopefully we'll keep your finger crossed that we get them on the show. I'm really excited about it, guys. Thanks again. Yeah, we're definitely going to have to get them on the show. They're a paranormal group, and they have a really good YouTube channel. So I want you guys to check them out. The only thing about these two guys, they work nights. So it's going to be hard for us to get them on the show. And I thought I'd tell you on the show while we're on live so you can't back out. I want to see about having, if we can pre-record them for a show.
That'd be nice.
Because they're really interesting. And I was watching their YouTube videos, man. They're serious investigators. I thought they were really cool. And I don't know. We're going to try to get them on. So I don't know what day would be good to do it. You know, what you guys can do, basically, even for an hour. I tried to talk to them, like maybe we could do it on a off night, and then earlier, maybe that you guys can give up an hour, and then we don't have to do the show. We can have Tuesday off. You know what I'm saying? We can have Tuesday off. We pre-record it. I don't know, but they're really neat. Check them out because I thought they were really fascinating.
What you could do is you could pre-record them, but just take all of our shows and just like take dubs of questions or whatever we asked and paste that in, so you don't even have to be there at all.
Maybe it's hard. There's so many guests I want to get on the show that they can't be on Tuesday night. They can't do Tuesday. A lot of people out of state, like the UK, Germany, you know, they can't do.
Well, if we pre-recorded, we could interact with guests, could ask more questions because we pay more attention to the chat.
That's true. I don't even know. Is there going to be a chat when they're pre-recorded? I haven't seen any. No,
I didn't think it happened the last time we did it.
There is on other shows.
Did you do a pre-recorded show? I never did.
No, I didn't. I've watched other shows on our network that were pre-recorded, and the hosts are there present during the live time, and they answer questions. The Outer Realm just did it like a week ago or something, and they answer questions in the chat room because their guests, couldn't. It was recorded earlier in the day, but I thought that was neat because then anything our listeners have questions about, plus we could interact more since, maybe we could have our guests talk more about their show and everything, and then after that, when we all watch it together again, we could discuss that more, so they would have more time to talk about it.
Because there's another guest that he's in the UK, and he said he's like 2 a.m. It's kind of, we'll just have to figure out a day that we all can do it.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. Like we're pretty booked up till the end of May with guests.
Who's next week, Jen?
I'll tell you in a second.
Sorry. Oh my God!
Oh, there's the flea market A-ball.
We forgot to ask him a question. Anybody's got a question for the old guy?
No, not tonight.
He scares me. Okay.
Is the pre-recording going to work?
What do you mean?
Oh,
You have to ask
the flea market 8-ball.
Mr. Project, is the pre-recording going to work?
The outcome cannot be predicted.
I know. I really can't predict it. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes, without question.
He's possessed. Hey, if that thing goes off when I'm not on the show, I'll be worried.
Why?
You never know. If it went off by itself, I'd be worried.
I think that would be neat, man. That would be great.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure
there's
I call you and tell you.
There's a little Salvation bell that I have, Salvation Army bell. And there was a ghost in my room. Because one night it was on my dresser and it started to ring. This little bell.
That's scary. I'm sorry.
I had a cool experience.
If you're by yourself and it goes off by yourself and you're all by yourself, I'd be scared.
So I was here by myself with the dogs, and I was talking to a friend on the phone, and we're doing some renovations, in the dining room and kitchen and everything, and it's nearing the finish line. But I'm just sitting there, and I heard all this loud crash and banging around, sound like pots and pans, and I'm like, what's going on? I'm the only one here. So I go out, there's nothing out because everything's like in the oven, just for storage right now. And it was just kind of mind boggling. It was cool to experience it, so maybe the spirits are acting up here a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, you're doing the remodel.
You're remodeling. You're making them.
Oh yeah, they always get excited. They haven't been that bad this time yet.
Oh, real quick, before you want to know what our guest is, it's his name is Bill Heeland, aka Dover Paratech.
He's always in the chat. Yeah,
he's in the chat all the time.
Yeah, he's a paranormal researcher, published the author of Subject Technology Used in Paranormal Research. He's enjoyed listening to our show, and he believes in all kind of alternative perspectives in the paranormal field. And
we'll make a believer out of you, Jenny.
What?
We'll all make a believer out of you eventually.
I am a believer. I'm just very skeptical when it comes to fairies. That's all. I believe in ghosts. Believe me, I have
aliens.
Well, yeah, we know that. I want you to respect what I believe too.
Okay.
And I respect your belief.
You know it.
Okay.
Me too. All right, Joe.
All right. Well, it's time to say goodbye.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in to this week's Torture Tuesday.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining Chasing Prophecy radio program on the FM 105.3 UPR network. Okay. Goodbye.
Good night.
See you later, folks. Ciao.